For some time now, I've been pondering and inviting my listeners to speculate on what the next big crisis will be. The past 3.5 years have made those of us with open eyes hypersensitive to the rhetoric, posturing and provocations of the machine. And who could blame us, though many do, conspiracy theorist, for seeing in each new brick in the wall the potentially ultimate masterstroke that will finally set off the envisioned catastrophe that will facilitate a hard implementation of the Great Reset. Those of us who recognise the gross abuse of the COVID and the attendant crime against humanity of the for what it was won't be fooled again, if indeed we were in the first place, which many of us were not. Now we're on the edge of our seats, analysing everything on a hair trigger, entirely expectant that any day could be the one on which it finally all kicks off. We've been badly abused, and unlike the majority of the population, we are in no denial about this fact. As such, like any victim of abuse who has confronted the reality of their situation, we are now hyper-vigilant, eyes peeled for the next approaching monster. The experience of the COVID paradigm customised us to unprecedented state and corporate brutality, and this has bred in myself and many others a tendency to presume, and not without ample reason, that whatever awaits us will be similarly extreme in form and function. But what if it isn't? Don't worry, I'm not going blue-pilled on you. I just mean, what if the dry run for centralised tyrannical world government, which COVID undoubtedly was, did not render the results they were hoping for, which it undoubtedly did not, thanks to us? And what if the plan now is simply death by 1,000 cuts? Whether one is inclined to downplay or overlook the impact of the global freedom movement circa late 2021, or whether you celebrate it and stand in awe of the millions around the world who marched for freedom and bodily autonomy, the fact is that we probably stopped them. We won the battle. When one reads military history, a common theme is that the reason many armies lose any given engagement is that they went into it prepared to fight the previous war. I wonder if it might behoove us of the freedom movement to learn from this tactical lesson of history and adjust our expectations around what is coming our way in the next few years, the next decade, the next 30 years. Much of my thinking and writing is focused on building resilience for the moment they finally bring the hammer down, and I'm hardly alone in this. But there is another view, again by no means unique to me, that the next battle will not look like the last one, and we certainly do not want to get caught short by having mistakenly prepared ourselves to fight the previous war. What if it's not a case of the hammer coming down, but something more akin to Chinese water torture? In many ways it is easier to fight a clear and present danger. It is precisely this reason that 2021 saw millions protesting all around the world. I remember those heady days now, almost with a perverse kind of nostalgia. I even wrote a poem about it, which sounds even better when set to music, linked in the description. We were experiencing hard tyranny, not the hardest in human history by any stretch, but certainly more so than any of us had experienced previously in our lifetimes. It is surprisingly easy to rise up against this kind of tyranny. We had 500,000 people in the street at the peak of the Melbourne protests, an utterly phenomenal feat, which, in a state of 5 million people, represented 10% of the population. It still blows my mind. Especially when one considers that these are only the folk who were willing or able to give up their Saturdays every weekend to go out and march. It is entirely possible that our sympathisers, not present at the events themselves, took our numbers up to 60% or more of the population. We're governed by moronic mediocrities, but even they are clued up enough to realise that this kind of opposition puts the perceived legitimacy of their rule in serious jeopardy. And it wasn't just Melbourne. Virtually every location that experienced COVID tyranny fielded stalwart protest marches, week after week, month after month, often enduring tear gas, rubber bullets, and even live ammunition in some cases, or so I've heard it reported. I've been waiting for the hammer to fall, but it could well be that after witnessing the alarming rise of the common people in 2021, the mandarins of the New World Order have decided to change tack. This is not to say they aren't throwing every crisis in the book at us. I mean, everything's a crisis these days, isn't it? I can barely remember a time now when the general theme of existence was not perpetual crisis. But this again could well be part of the new playbook. Not one big earth-shaking event like a pandemic, but a plethora of perpetual, interchangeable and universal crises, the collective effect of which will be to gradually demoralise and weaken us to the point where we eventually opt in to whatever they have in the pipeline. Despite terrorising a handful of credulous idiots back into donning their face nappies, COVID 2.0 appears to have fizzled out. The Ukraine war, while still dangerously volatile, shows all the signs of flattening out into yet another decades-long boondoggle for the military-industrial complex. The cost of living crisis, aka the giant Ponzi scheme, otherwise known as the global financial system, is now just everyday life. Remember when they were calling it transitory? And now the age-old spectre of Israel and Palestine is shaking things up again. I've been distracted by personal issues of late, but even had I not been, I'd have paid very little attention to this latest crisis. I mean, honestly, yeah, it's horrible. But what is everyone getting so worked up about? It's only been going on since 1947. And as I've said before, I'm really not interested in any popular mass outrage until a majority of people can first confront the singular greatest outrage of our time, the genocide. And behind it all, bubbling along in the background, is the good old faithful that never seems to get old: climate change. It's just another day in the modern world, isn't it? Look here, look there, be afraid, pick your team and gnash your teeth at the other side. It's one enormous psyop, and while each new component part heightens our state of alert, we of the counter-hegemonic resistance, it has the opposite effect on the great mass of humanity, those still sleeping in the matrix. It desensitizes and disorientates them, constantly weakening their ability to discern truth from lies, and making of them compliant, docile marionettes. And perhaps this is the point. Perhaps this is the plan now. Not a great reset so much as a great Nothingburger. For at this point, doesn't everything feel kind of normal once more? Can you believe it's been almost 4 years since we first heard the word coronavirus? I walk around. I see people going about their lives with the same old stupid smiles and catching snatches of the same old banal conversations. Friday night footy and holidays in Bali. bottomless brunch venues on Chapel Street packed with glittering, shrieking peacocks. The middle management stratum of career women earnestly exchanging their accounts of the valiant superhero balancing act they perform each day as both mothers and breadwinners. And oh, didn't I tell you, Scarlett got accepted to Sacred Heart? Everything appears just as it was before, even though everything has changed. An awakening has occurred, no doubt about it, and we can build on this. But the machine has most people right where it wants them, blissfully ignorant, trusting, and most importantly, laser-focused on their own importance and pleasure. So do they really need another pandemic or some other global catastrophe to effect their great reset? Can they not just keep everyone distracted with Ukraine, Israel, and endless fear-mongering about this thing or that? And of course, the torrent of zombifying music, entertainment, and vice that gushes from every smart device in every street corner. The devil may well be in the details, and I and many others may have been mistakenly sitting here for the past couple of years preparing to fight the last war. While most of us were busy living our comfortable middle-class lives, a giant supranational technocracy was assembled. They constructed the walls of our prison alongside the very idols of our hedonism, and, while we were sleeping, a Leviathan was birthed. The Great Reset may not come in the form of another series of hard lockdowns, but simply the creeping, mind-numbing malaise of legislation. I use the term Nothingburger facetiously, for you know as well as I that there is nothing normal or benign about the world we inhabit now, nor the envisioned future that is in store. But the point is not what we who are awake can see, but how it feels to those who are still asleep. My gut tells me that despite the great awakening and the millions who have come over to our side, with each passing day of regular life, all our warnings and predictions of doom increasingly strike the regular normie as a great big nothing burger. See, they will say, it's all back to the old normal now. Nothing to get in a twist over. Now, if they could just get interest rates down a tad, everything will be peachy. And that's how the machine will win. To be clear, I still believe there are better than even odds that they'll try something big in the next couple of years, though again, we would likely be mistaken to expect it will look exactly like the last battle we fought. As we learn, so too does the machine. Yet it may well just roll on, from one distraction to another, until everyone is so giddy with it all that they'll happily shamble into whatever gulag is awaiting them. An opt-in tyranny. A great big Nothingburger reset. The answer? As always, we must stay agile and ready for action. But we must be prepared to play the long game, build strength, resilience, and get really good at saying no. And we must avoid the trap of preparing for the last war, then finding that the enemy has an entirely new, or simply the same age-old strategy: lies and deception, and death by 1,000 cuts. A Substack reader of mine, Naus, left a comment on a recent post, linked in the description, which nicely sums up what I'm trying to say here. I had been drawing on a recent personal loss and examining the nature of grief, specifically that we usually go through grief alone, and I posited that when the Great Reset comes, it will happen to all of us simultaneously, and by implication there was cause for hope. I closed by saying, personal grief can make of each of us a hero. Collective grief can create revolutions. To which Nous responded, let's hope so, but sooner rather than later. There is a bit of a difference perhaps between the elements of individual grief you posit and the elements of the societal angst you anticipate. Grief is immediate, and is the person left behind wanting to say yes. The person who leaves, either through death or other, has little interest in the grief. They've moved on. The societal angst, however, comes almost too late for action, and is based on each of us saying no to an unwanted upheaval, rather than yes to something we desire. So the angst will almost, by definition, be by the skin of our teeth, if it is indeed in time, and the later we leave it to say no, the more infrastructure is in place to enslave us. So the no needs to be a really serious no, which destroys the infrastructure being placed around us. Leaving the infrastructure in place for the next clown who wants to control us is not an option. So the revolution you anticipate needs to be a complete rejection, not just a simper and a turned cheek. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Please also subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on X at RealJJDawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab, and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.